his departure, it is not a ludicrous thing to propose that this system would take the place of the normal procedure, the customary procedure. The customary procedure is outlined in this letter here. But unfortunately, Prabhupada didn't see anybody who was qualified to take up this customary business. What was he to do? It is very clear that he set up a Ritvik Acharya system which could function in his absence, because he made this proviso that the Ritvik Acharyas, on their discretion, they could initiate. On their discretion, they could give names. He clearly set up a system which could operate in his absence and in the absence of someone qualified. Don't forget, Prabhupada said no one was qualified. 1 month before the first of the appointment tapes, he stated quite emphatically that no one was qualified. So, the question that I could put to you in that respect is, when did you become qualified? Because that is Prabhupada's statement. No one was qualified. So perhaps we could have an answer to that question.
First of all, I want to address this issue of the idea of talking about a posthumous Ritvik system, or we're not allowed to mention the fact that Prabhupada departed or disappeared, that it's somehow rather an offense and a contradiction. I simply wish that Karnamrita Prabhu or these other people would settle this issue by writing Prabhupada a letter and letting us know what he says when he answers back, if he's living and present in the same way he was at all times. There has been a change. There has been a change, and there is a felt absence of Srila Prabhupada. When the Acharya departs, chaos comes. Things like that do happen, as we all well know. And that's what this whole discussion is about. It's about the fact that Srila Prabhupada has departed. He's not here in the same way that he was before. He says the Guru is available. Well, yes, the Guru is available. The question is, how is he available? I say that he's available according to the normal way of disciplic succession that was laid down by Srila Prabhupada. I say that there's no indication, in my mind, that Srila Prabhupada made himself available in another way through a system of posthumous Ritviks. This is the way Srila Prabhupada is available. By the way, gurus have always been available through the parampara system. That's my answer to that. Srila Prabhupada, I might answer parenthetically just to get off the subject a little bit, did not quite emphatically say that no one was fit. He said, H-M-M-M, period. In the point of Tamal Krishna. Tamal Krishna says, Prabhupada, I think none of us is fit. Prabhupada says, And then he goes on to say that you have to be trained. Now, I don't think that Srila Prabhupada gave any ringing endorsement to anybody. Obviously, if we want to get into this, I can give you a little bit of my judgment about what happened. My judgment about what happened, and this is not something I'm certain about, but it's just to me a reasonable understanding of what went on, is that Srila Prabhupada could understand that even among his best men, and I think we should understand that the 11 Ritvik Gurus were pretty much his best men. That means all of us were worse. That after 12 years of doing what he has done, these were his best men. And that, so among them, he appointed 11 of them to be Ritvik Gurus. Now, he knew very well where they were at. The spiritual master knows his disciples very well. If I can just repeat one incident that happened, for example, with Kirtanananda Swami, according to Bhakti Charu Swami, this is the last exchange that happened between Kirtanananda and Srila Prabhupada. That Prabhupada's sister, we call Pishima, came to cook for him. And Kirtanananda was his secretary, his servant at the time, didn't want her to cook for him, thought it'd be bad for Srila Prabhupada, got in a series of arguments with Srila Prabhupada over it. And when she finally brought some prasadam and she cooked for Srila Prabhupada, Kirtanananda tried to take it away. And Prabhupada became furious. Bhakti True Swami is in the room and said to Kirtanananda, "Don't ever think that you know more than the spiritual master." Kirtanananda turned around, left the room, packed his bags, and left Vrindavan. That was his last exchange with Srila Prabhupada. Don't you think that you ever know more than the spiritual master? So, Prabhupada obviously understood what was going on. Why? But my reasonable understanding is, I think it's a reasonable understanding, that when it came to actually, because he said, "I shall select some of you," this is the selection that never was, "I shall select some of you," that what he did was he both selected and didn't select. Very cleverly, obliquely, at an arm's length, he appointed 11 Ritvik gurus and also said, you cannot become guru unless you are qualified. Now this to me, this was a nod. These are my best people. This was a nod in their direction. It was an oblique way of answering the question as who will initiate after your departure. That's what Srila Prabhupada did. I have more to say about that, but I'll stop now. May I have an extension? May I have an extension, Srila?
Okay, go on.
Let him finish and then I'll let you.
No, he appointed Ritviks with the understanding, but there's no indicate that they would become regular gurus if they were qualified. And that was his warning. You have to be qualified. And obviously, some of them weren't qualified. That's obvious from our history, that some of them weren't qualified. And Prabhupada knew it, and he didn't want to associate with, there's no ringing endorsement that these 11 are my chosen, heirs or disciples. These are the people I have complete confidence in. Prabhupada didn't do that. So that's what I believe that happened when Prabhupada appointed these 11 Ritviks. He did, in a way, give a nod, an indication. These are my best people. And what happened afterwards is not just a reflection on the nasty people or how fallen they were. It's a reflection on the state of the collective spiritual advancement of the Krishna consciousness movement at the time of Srila Prabhupada's departure. That's what we're suffering from. And I think from a lot of this suffering, people have made more advancement. That is, because that's how you make advancement, apparently, is by suffering like hell. And a lot of people have suffered. And some people, at any rate, have made more advancement. But that's the reason what's happened. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say.
I'll just say one thing. You issued a ringing challenge. When did you become fit to initiate? I'm unfit to initiate, but I disagree with your system anyway.
What was the last part? Could you repeat that?
I'm unfit to initiate, but I disagree with the posthumous Ritvik system anyway.
Okay, go ahead with a
I want to
reply.
make a quick comment about the question. Prabhupada accepted everyone that the temple president wrote to him and advised. He accepted that. And he said at the discretion of the Ritvik, he would accept them. And by following Prabhupada's orders, as he told Tamal Krishna in a letter, then the initiator is with him. And so that's how Prabhupada would accept them, if they follow his instructions in his books. Mm-hmm. And that's all I wanted to say. It's clear and simple.
Okay. To Rupa Vilas. You state that a devotee becomes a bona fide spiritual master when he gets a direct order from Krishna in a dream or some revelation. When did Srila Prabhupada indicate that this was the way he wanted his disciplic succession to continue? It seems that this type of revelation or dream order is not practical. Why do you propose this as Prabhupada's system? So of course, the basis of this is on my order, you become guru. So if it's not by, how are you suggesting that this should be, how does a devotee know when he's received the order? I think this is from Vedic Village Review, isn't it? There's something in there about this?
Well, we did quote something. Actually, in 1976 in New York, there was a conversation with Srila Prabhupada about this very topic. And he explained that the bona fide spiritual master, this Krishna, speaks to him directly. He told the reporter that whatever he wanted to know, that Krishna would tell him. So Rameshwar Swami tried to explain that no, actually, Yesham, what is that? Dadami Buddha Yogam Tam, that Krishna supplied intelligence, and in this way he was directly interacting with the devotee. And Prabhupada said, no, not like that. He said, I don't remember the exact words, but something like directly. And then recently in the 7th canto I read another description where Prabhupada talks there about how a devotee is always being dictated to from within the heart by Krishna what he is to do. So when one comes to this stage where Krishna begins to direct him personally, then we say at that point he becomes qualified. And in that state, many metaphysical things that are presently perhaps beyond our ken may and do take place. For instance, we know that in the history of our predecessor acharyas, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the entire disciplic succession, the Panchatattva, all appeared to him and directed him in his preaching activities. That Srila Prabhupada was repeatedly, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur did repeatedly appear to him in dreams, that Krishna personally appeared to him in the Jaladuta to give him encouragement. There are many such, Ramanujacharya, in the histories of the lives of the various acharyas, there are many, many, many such examples, and this is documented in the books of Srila Prabhupada also. Now here's, where is that particular? For instance, in a letter that Srila Prabhupada wrote to Janardhan, which is often quoted, there is also this very interesting statement about Ban Maharaj. He says, so that is a great history. It is not possible to say everything in this letter. But for the present, be satisfied with these words, and later we shall talk more and more. On the whole, you may know that he is not a liberated person, and therefore he cannot initiate any person to Krishna consciousness. It requires special spiritual benediction from higher authorities. So that is another confirming statement.
So far, the only one of Srila Prabhupada's prominent disciples that is testified to having received dictation from Srila Prabhupada in a dream is Kirtanananda Swami. My question is, how the rest of us are going to know, how we're going to validate the dream of the next Acharya. How prospective disciples and how the leaders, how is your temple president going to say, okay, we accept this person's dream as being bona fide and we think it's okay for you to take initiation. Your GBC men, your temple presidents, the people that your new bhaktas are looking toward for guidance, how are we all to know when that person who genuinely received the legitimate real McCoy dream, how are we going to recognize that? And how is the disciple going to recognize it?
I would say that this is not the only means by which one becomes qualified. Obviously, he would exhibit certain other symptoms which are described in the scriptures when he's factually a liberated person. But I would say that that's another way that one may know. Now, you ask, how will we certify this? Actually, it may be a problem for us how to certify it, but it's not a problem for a self-realized soul. For instance, Prabhupada, Bhaktisiddhanta mentioned the emergence of a self-effulgent acharya. Now, for the godbrothers of that self-effulgent acharya, it may become a problem how he's to be certified. But for the person who is so liberated, Krishna is dictating to him directly, so whatever moves he makes are infallible and perfect, and whatever he does on Krishna's behalf will produce the most favorable result. So I agree with you that this may be a theoretical problem, but since currently it doesn't seem to be giving us too much difficulties, since no one is claiming to have been personally appointed or anointed or spoken to, then it doesn't seem like it's a very pressing, urgent difficulty that has to be resolved.
And in the case of Kirtanananda, it is so obviously not inspiration from Prabhupada. I can't see that example is very effective myself.
I'm afraid that you haven't answered my question. Your first answer is, well, a self-realized soul can detect another self-realized soul. It takes one to know one. My question is, all right, how are we going to detect the first one? All right, I'm willing to listen again.
Let me just get this straight. So what you want to know is, will you repeat what it is you think I haven't answered?
You basically said that a bona fide acharya is going to be a person who's going to be receiving dictation from within. Yeah. Krishna talks to him face to face. He appears in dreams and dictates and so on. And you've already said that that person, when he gets dictation, he'll know it. And I agree. Yeah. My question is, how are the rest of us going to know it?
He will be self-effulgent. And he won't speak according to the scriptures. And he will not concoct philosophy. He will not speak against the revealed scriptures. And he will not concoct philosophies in disobedience of his previous acharyas. And he will not concoct philosophies that contradict the previous acharyas. Do you understand the point?
Yeah, but to me, I know a lot of people who I don't believe receive dictation in dreams or see Krishna face to face, and they don't concoct philosophies. They don't make up deviations. They follow what Prabhupada said. When they give a Bhagavatam class, what they say is what's the same thing in the book. I don't understand how that my question is answered so far. Except by saying that it's theoretical and it doesn't matter, we don't have to deal with it. We're just putting off a difficult question.
I think it's a very common fact that you mentioned Bhagavatam class. We very often hear that some mistake is made, even though the person may be very sincere. The fact is that as long as there is a tinge of conditioning there, the mistakes will be made. Therefore, the spiritual master should be above this conditioning, and mistakes will not be made. Not only that, but he can receive the direct dictation of Krishna.
Are we getting a little bit off the Ritvik?
I think we're straying.
I think we're going to come back to something around your point in a later question. For Jayadvaita Swami, in your presentation, you mentioned that if Srila Prabhupada had wanted a Ritvik system, that he would undoubtedly have spoken at length about it. Couldn't it be just the opposite if you were to accept their evidence that they presented? Wouldn't it be just the opposite, that Prabhupada would have assumed that he had already said all that he needed to say about Ritvik, just go ahead and continue what you're doing? So couldn't it be possibly just the opposite of what you said?
It appears to be a circular question. The question, in essence, is if the Ritvik Guru system had been something that Srila Prabhupada had been instructing us to do all along, and it was clear, and there was lots of evidence, and Prabhupada had spoken about it at length, would I be satisfied that he didn't need to speak about it more? The answer is sure.
The scriptural principle is initiation, that one must be initiated. Now that is discussed at quite some length in the scriptures, in Srila Prabhupada's books. Now the specific details of how that initiation is to be done, that can be adjusted by the Acharya. I think that is, you would not dispute that. And we see that he did make some rather radical and unusual adjustments to spread a worldwide preaching method with the way that he instituted this Ritvik system while he was present. Do you disagree with that?
Yeah.
This is my first point. I just want to know if you could test that he did make some...
That represented a radical
I'm saying it was quite an unusual system that he created with this Ritvik system, which was not traditional while he was on the planet.
I don't acknowledge that.
Oh, you don't? All right, well then, maybe I can proceed. Anyway, whether you acknowledge it or not, it appears to us that we have made a good case for the fact that he did establish an unusual system for initiation, which was not the traditional Gaudiya Vaishnava system of initiation in our Sampradaya. Now, that was done while he was on the planet. Now, when Srila Prabhupada made out his will, he mentions in one of the first sentences that this system of management, now I'm stressing this word management because the scriptural principle has to do with initiation. The specific means by which it's executed is more or less a detail of management. So he says here, this system of management will continue as it is now, and there is no need of any change. So the system, the practical system which he had set up in regards to initiation was the Ritwik system. And here he says that this system of management will continue as it is now, and there is no need of any change. Now it would appear that what happened after Srila Prabhupada's departure was a significant change from what he had established. And what has happened since that time as a means of reform also seems to be a significant departure from what was going on while he was present. And I may just repeat several statements that you yourself made a few years ago. After Srila Prabhupada's disappearance for many years, the GBC systematically misrepresented Srila Prabhupada's teachings and instructions about carrying on the disciplic succession. And the GBC instituted, encouraged, and for many years belligerently and obstinately defended symbols, rituals, practices, teachings, and structures meant to create and perpetuate for a small group an elite status to which they were never entitled. Now, I think the question I would put to you, has anything changed since you wrote this?
The answer is yes. That I stand by what I said. The GBC represented to us, falsely I believe, that Srila Prabhupada had appointed 11 pure devotees who were to be the spiritual masters for the whole society, that they were the spiritual masters of their disciples, that they were essentially the spiritual masters of their godbrothers, that each of them was supposed to be the spiritual master for the people in a geographical zone of the world, that the business of that we could only get Prabhupada's mercy through those godbrothers, and a host of other ideas which are so thoroughly discredited that they're no longer even spoken about, practically speaking, in today's ISKCON. So the answer to, do I feel that the circumstances I spoke about then have changed, is yes.
If Yashodanandana Prabhu heard directly from Srila Prabhupada that the Ritwik system should be installed, why did he wait so long to emphasize it instead of doing so in a paper mentioned by Ravindra, written in 1981?
A paper written by Ravindra in 1981. Could you perhaps get the facts?
Referring to the 79 paper, the paper I referred to. In other words, in 1979, you wrote a paper in Vrindavan. In 1981, I guess you were some participation in this bona fide spiritual master and disciple paper.
All the facts regarding that paper?
Only the facts that you told me, and one of them is that you're one of the authors.
You factually know the circumstances behind that paper. Before you're alleging, first of all, the paper is here. Yeah. My name was never signed to this paper. I would like to state on record, this paper, the bona fide spiritual master and the disciple, was a reply to a paper that had been issued, several papers that had been issued by the leading members of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness in 78, 79, and 80. This paper does not contain my name. I never factually authored it. I never signed my name to it. I did write you a letter, by the way, but to the best of my knowledge and belief and recollection, the letter was not in 1984, because at that time I was already in Toronto, working for a law firm. The best of my knowledge and belief, my letter to you was 2 years earlier. Now, whether you have the original letter or not, I can't say.
It's undated. It's true.
But why did you... first of all, why did you state that I wrote it in 1984 when you did not have knowledge of the fact that it was in 1984?
Because it was written to me just after I got involved in the and that was in 1984. Okay, that's why I said that. So it was a deduction, because you didn't date your letter, that it was 1984.
So it's an incorrect assumption.
It's an incorrect assumption if you didn't... I don't know if you remember any better than I do, because it's not dated. And you mentioned this paper that you have in front of you.
Yeah.
as soon as I find it here. You mentioned the 79 paper. It's a very nice survey of all the different things that come out. Yeah, the 1981 paper, Bonafide Spiritual Master and the Disciple. I helped in compiling many of the quotes and citations. That's what you say. Kailash Chandra Das, Dhruva Maharaj Das, and Bahushira Das were some of the contributing authors. So you were involved in the production of that by compiling quotations for that. Okay, that's just what I wanted.
When I was in Buffalo in 1980, Jadurani Dasi had been in New Vrindavan. She had been preaching to various members of the New Vrindavan community that Srila Prabhupada had never appointed 11 successors, and she was preaching especially that they had never been appointed as the Diksha Gurus of ISKCON. Her understanding at the time, from partial transcripts that she had seen from a paper issued by Rameswar Das and Shubhananda Das in July of 1980, was that Prabhupada never appointed successors, never appointed Diksha Gurus, but the system should have continued as it was, which is the main purpose of the paper that she wrote. She came to me from New Vrindavan. She was all bloodied up with black. I asked her, where have you come from? She said, I came from New Vrindavan. I've been kicked, I've been beaten up. They tried to put my sari on a pole because I was preaching that the 11 were not the appointed successors, and they had not been appointed the Diksha Gurus of ISKCON. This fact has been corroborated by many devotees. She asked me, I want to write a paper about Prabhupada's position and his meaning of what he meant for the continuation of ISKCON. And she was very disturbed by many papers that had been issued, many GBC papers, many GBC reports, many various statements by various devotees. She said, could you help me present some quotes? I says, if you're going to present quotes that I'm going to say, and if you're not going to sign your name, then don't mention me. I helped her compile some of the quotes, but the allegation which you say, and that I have supported, that Prabhupada never appointed Ritviks, this is irrelevant, because I never saw the final version of that. I give her some indication of what are the qualifications of a bona fide spiritual master, because I saw certain quotes from various GBCs that advocated that the scriptures are inconclusive, as it has been stated in the 1980 GBC report. And I thought that this was not exactly a proper statement. And I give her numerous quotes. I says, don't put my name unless I see the final version. As such, I think it's grossly unfair and inappropriate to allege that I was one of the authors. I helped them compile some things, and they've put it in their own words. And there is nobody in this that compiled this paper that even signed it. And there's also another reason that I'd like to respectfully submit before you. Namely, that in 1978, when I was in Vrindavan, I did factually attempt to discuss this entire issue of the difference between Ritvik Acharya and Sampradaya Acharya with the entire GBC. As a matter of fact, I do have partial transcripts of the conversations that took place in February of 1979 where the question was raised by me, quote, what is the difference between a Ritvik Acharya and a Sampradaya Acharya? At that point, I did not even have the time to finish the question. 6 people interrupted me, and the point was cut off. The answer from Tamal Krishna Goswami, this has already all been discussed by the GBC. There is nothing to be discussed next. I raised my hand. The floor was never given. I also wrote a letter to Satsvarup Das Goswami on January 1st of 1979 with a list of 25 questions to be discussed, one of which was, what was the actual statement of Srila Prabhupada in 1977 regarding the exact position, authority, and mandate of the 11 alleged Diksha Gurus? I never got an answer. Now, I don't know if Maharaj got it. I assume that because the Indian mail is notoriously bad. It was even signed in my previous name, Yasodanand Swami. I did attempt to bring the issue up. I did make every effort to bring it up. Unfortunately, many of the GBCs had concluded that this was not to be discussed, and many of them concluded that the very discussion of these topics was a sign of envy against Prabhupada, a sign of envy against the GBC, a sign of a nonsensical attitude of rebellion. Now, I suggest to you that this is not so proper. And not only that, but while they were telling me that the Gurukul and the Vrindavan project was going nicely, Rameshwar Das in 1978, and I wish to present as evidence. Nobody wants to hear it now. No, because this is directly relevant. Why I did not bring it up.
It's not that we don't want to hear it. It's not appropriate for today.
The question that was raised, and I'm still a little confused about what the answer is, that we don't see, at least in the 79 paper, that you didn't at least make known to the people who were involved in the 81 paper that you didn't make known to me in whatever date you sent this letter the fact that you had firm, certain, and complete knowledge that Srila Prabhupada intended for the initiating gurus to go in the capacity of Ritviks, and that Prabhupada would always remain the initiating guru indefinitely. The question is, that we never heard about it.
I tried to. You didn't care to hear it.
Well, you could have. It's not in my letter. I was open.
He's answered the question.
People didn't want to hear it, and so various individuals stated that we have no place for him in ISKCON. What do we need? Smarter Brahmins like Pradyumna and Yashodanandan. So I said, Hare Krishna Prabhu, you go on. Okay. These statements were factually made in 1978 by one GBC of the Southern California zone. So,
I appreciate it.
Okay.
I'm not trying to justify myself or vindicate myself. I'm trying to explain the circumstances why these statements were never brought up, although there were attempts to bring them up.
Okay, we'll have to leave it at that for now.
The full details can be probably brought up in due course of time.
Getting away from the thrust of the argument here, I think it's a place for a personal expression of sympathy for the kind of experiences that Yashodananda and Prabhu had to go through. It's just a shame that important devotees that Prabhupada wanted to entrust great responsibilities to, and that he loved and wanted them to do service in Krishna consciousness, that they got treated so badly.
A question for Karnam Rita Prabhu. If someone can take a posthumous guru, then can I take Jagannath Das Babaji as my guru?
The answer is very simple. The answer is no. Prabhupada set up the Ritvikacharya with respect to himself. How can one possibly accept some other person as his Diksha Guru, unless that person, of course, personally appears to them? No, the answer is no. Simple. Prabhupada set up Ritvikacharya system with himself as the initiator until such time as a qualified Guru appeared.
Okay. Any reply you'd like to make to that? Okay. Next question is for Rupa Vilas.
All right, we'll turn it over to...
That in 1970, when we were in India, first sent there by Prabhupada, I was alone with the Chutananda. And then that time, the whole thing in New Vrindavan broke out with the four sannyasis who started preaching Mayavad. Then at that time, when Prabhupada arrived into Calcutta, after all the receptions and everything, then he called Achyutananda in his room. I was thinking to myself, why is he calling? Maybe he'll give him sannyas or something, because he heard how everybody got sannyas in L.A. But I heard Prabhupada raising his voice and speaking very loudly to Achyutananda. I knew, well, it sounds like he's getting scolded for something. Must be something else. The next day I was called in the room, and then Prabhupada, he started to make very heavy inquiry from me. Did you get any letter? Did you send any letter? What did my godbrothers speak to you? Did anyone tell you that, Bhakti Siddhanta is your guru? And all various questions like that. Then I didn't know anything about it. So then he turned to his secretary and said, well, he seems innocent, but Achyutananda is poisoned. So I was real curious to know what happened. So then he called everybody in the room and explained that some of his godbrothers had preached to Achyutananda that actually, since Bhakti Siddhanta was the real inspiration for Srila Prabhupada, that actually Prabhupada was just like a deputy or a representative guru, but actually everybody was Bhakti Siddhanta's initiated disciple. And then when Brahmananda, he wrote that, and then Achyutananda wrote that to Brahmananda. When Brahmananda got the letter, started meditating on it, well then, if I can jump over the present guru, and I can become a disciple of Bhakti Siddhanta, well then why not, then actually the inspiration is Bhakti Vinod Thakur or previous gurus. So this way Rupa Goswami can be inspiration. And then finally Lord Chaitanya. Then ultimately Krishna, he's the inspiration for everyone. So actually we're all Krishna's disciple. So if we're Krishna's disciple, then somehow he snapped and Prabhupada is Krishna and he became Mayavad. So Prabhupada said that the system of disciplic succession. If you jump over a current link, if you don't follow the system, then you become Mayavad. So that was, that we always understood it, that there was a system of disciplic succession where you take initiation from a spiritual master and connect. And this system that's being the posthumous Ritik thing would be a Mayavadi deviation according to Prabhupada's own instruction.
I'll give you 2 minutes to reply.
Being Mayavadi, you've got to get a chance to offer.
2 minutes to reply.
All right. Well, clearly in the case of seeing Srila Prabhupada as the deputy of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, this is ludicrous because Prabhupada was a qualified guru. He was a qualified link. He was a Paramahamsa, Mahabhagavat, current link. So clearly in that case it was wrong to see Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati as the actual initiator. And of course we're talking about Diksha. One can have many, many gurus that are Shiksha gurus, and indeed we all accept the Shiksha of Krishna every day from Bhagavad Gita directly. So in that sense we are the Shiksha disciples of Krishna. But in terms of Diksha, it was wrong in the case of Prabhupada. However, if there is not a qualified current link to jump over, what is the question of jumping over?
Next question. I just have 3 more questions here, but I think they're all important and should be dealt with. To Rupa Vilas Prabhu, why are you totally ignoring the evidences brought forward in Veerabahu Prabhu's book regarding qualifications for the bona fide guru, that he doesn't have to be an Uttama Adhikari?
I hope I'm not totally ignoring them. I have made somewhat of a study of Veerabahu's book, as a matter of fact, because it is a much read and discussed book in our society. I do find, however, that his book has some limitations in this respect, that upon researching it quite thoroughly, I find that there is an enormous amount of evidence cited from letters and room conversations, and frankly, very little substantial evidence cited from Srila Prabhupada's books. Now, in resolving matters of Siddhanta, conclusions of the Parampara, we must go to the law books. Now, Srila Prabhupada's books are our law books for the next 10,000 years, and I think everyone will agree to this. So if one wants to resolve the issue of the qualifications of the spiritual master, I think that we can consider all evidence. But when we go to the law books themselves, we find that the overwhelming preponderance of evidence is that the guru must be a liberated person, and we will only find a very small handful of quotes that can even suggest anything otherwise. And I'm preparing an article which may turn into a book right now to substantiate this. I have included a sampling of those quotations in this paper, which I encourage everyone to look at, which comes strictly either from almost entirely, with the exception of 1 or 2 letters, from Srila Prabhupada's books. And I am prepared to present hundreds of references from his books which indicate that the spiritual master must be a self-realized person. And I challenge anyone who thinks that they can prove the contrary from Srila Prabhupada's books to do so. I don't think it can be done.
Yeah. In the Middle Ages, there was a book called Sikh et Non, which had quotations from scripture and authorities on both sides of different issues. Sikh et Non means yes and no, and you can obviously see why such a book was compiled, that one group of people would present a case and they'd quote the authorities, and another group would come along and they'd have their quotes. And so then one group would have their quotes and another group would have their quotes. So this was compiled like this, put them all together, which is probably what should be done if we want to make a thorough study of the issue. I suggest the title should be Iti Neti Cha, and we can have all the quotes for us to look at side by side, and we'll see. And then you have to get down, like whether some rule he borrows from the civil law courts, preponderance of the evidence, maybe it's beyond a reasonable doubt. Maybe that's the one. How do we know whether it's civil or criminal standards of evidence? There may be all different kinds of reasons for saying, because, for example, let me just give one case. There's only one verse. There's only one verse that Gaudiya Vaishnavism rests on. Ete chamsa kalapumsam Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. The preponderance of the evidence is against it. But that one verse, we hang everything on one verse. And why is that? It's not just preponderance of the evidence. The real thing is that Jiva Goswami says that this statement applies because it's a Mahavakya. And there are a whole list of rules of what constitutes a Mahavakya, and he says why this particular statement is a Mahavakya. So there's reasons given and evidence. So it means that we have to become a little bit scholarly and a little bit sober. But the first thing we have to do before we even get into it is at least understand what Prabhupada's instructions were on this matter, and go back to the real topic and see whether or not, in fact, Prabhupada authorized this posthumous Ritvik system. That is a question of not philosophy or scriptural interpretation or hermeneutics. It's a question of what is Prabhupada's order that he gave. It's a question of the evidence, and that still has to be resolved. Then we can go into this. As I said, I'm willing to do this for a long, long time, but it's not really relevant. It's only relevant by a logical fallacy, that of setting up a false alternative.
Okay. Now, I would think that a lot of people would have made complaints in the past about how ISKCON instituted the Guru system after Srila Prabhupada's departure. And I think one of the major complaints is that it was institutionalized. Now, in a way, there seems to be a reflection of that, the other flip side of the coin here, in your Ritvik proposal. That it's been institutionalized one way. Now let's flip it and institutionalize it the other way. Now the question here is that where is the role in all of this for the prospective disciple? Prabhupada gave the example that if you want to find a genuine spiritual master, and that's what we're talking about here, this is the real issue, getting hooked up with a genuine spiritual master, then you have to study the Shastras to know what is a genuine spiritual master. He gave the analogy that if you go into the market to buy gold, but you don't know what is gold, then you're going to be cheated. So it's the responsibility of the prospective disciple to know what is a bona fide guru. So that would lead us to think, that might lead some of us to think, that the primary responsibility for resolving this lies on the disciple and on the honesty of the prospective spiritual master. That ultimately this is a personal question between guru and disciple, that I have faith in this person. So where does the personal equation fit into this whole thing?
You could make that question a little personal equation. You can make that really...
What is... you understand it now?
I just like you could rephrase the last part.
Shall we continue with an institutionalized system that, are we going to say absolutely that these 11 are gurus, or are we going to say absolutely that now they're not gurus and that everybody has to take from a Ritvik? Where's the role of the disciple in genuinely evaluating the prospective guru?
I have one quick comment about that. Prabhupada also said that the GBC could elect and remove the Ritviks as they were qualified. So it tells right there. I mean, I heard this in my own ears. Everybody might not believe it. Tapes were made and tapes are not available, so it is hard to prove it. But the fact that Prabhupada did say it, I swear to my life that he said it, to say that it's a Mayavadi statement, or this is just taken out of context with another example, it's just not true. Prabhupada did say this. And I'll defer to Rupa Vilas here for this answer.
The question is who
talking about a personal equation.
Is the GBC to decide, or is the prospective disciple to decide?
It's still not a very clear question. If this system were to be established, Prabhupada would be the initiator until such time as a qualified guru appeared.
When everybody could agree.
Not necessarily everybody.
Well, what if I
anyway.
Let him finish.
So the relationship is between the disciple and Prabhupada. Just as everybody actually has a relationship with Prabhupada, Everybody attends Guru Puja. They worship Prabhupada, offer obeisances to him, sing his praise. They accept his instruction through books, tapes, and so forth. So I'm not exactly sure what you mean by personal. I hope we don't mean physical.
Let me clarify the question. If we were to institutionalize this Ritvik system as you proposed it, what happens if I, as a prospective disciple, decide that I want to take initiation from this person as my sole and whole guru, as my representative of the Sampradaya? I've studied the Shastras, I've heard, I've listened, went through all the steps that Prabhupada described in the Shastras, and I feel this person is for me to take initiation from.
Okay, so if that person is genuinely qualified, then what is to stop him accepting that person as a disciple? On the other hand, if he is not, and he's a loyal follower of Prabhupada's instructions in this regard, accepting that they are true, then he will say, I'm sorry, I cannot do this. You are wrong. He will preach to that person. He'll put them straight. He will say, Prabhupada is the initiator at present. I can't see that there will be any conflict there. If the devotees are preached to properly, then there will be no confusion in their minds. And it is a fact that anybody who has just a little advancement will appreciate that they have a relationship with Prabhupada. We have his murti here. Every temple, practically speaking, Prabhupada's murti is there, and he is worshipped as a person. And in terms of instruction, everybody has access to his books. So the personal relationship is there. We must remember that Vani is more important than Vapu. The Vapu doesn't have to be there, and just in case we have some tendency to see the spiritual master in a bodily way, then the Murti is there. The Murti stands in the place of the Vapu.
I'd like to make a suggestion. In the event that we do institute the Ritvik Guru system as something we want to accept in ISKCON, after we implement that system, in the event that a self-effulgent acharya appears on the scene, don't accept him. Because there's always a 5% chance or a 2% chance or a 10 or 15% chance that he might not be the right article. But Prabhupada's always a 100% sure thing. So even when the self-effulgent acharya appears, reject him and stick with Prabhupada. That is a logical consequence of accepting the Ritvik Guru system posthumously.
What would be the harm in that?
What would be the what?
Harm.
Because you're not sure.
What would be the harm in doing just what you say? They
Great.
want to do it.
You're for it. I'm just, okay.
What's the harm in it?
Fine, Prabhupada forever, and disciplic succession finished.
Okay, it's order. Let's put this question then. If we were to do this, what you just suggested, if this had been in place, if this system had been in place during Bhaktisiddhanta's time, are you saying that we should have then rejected Srila Prabhupada even though we felt he was the self-effulgent acharya?
With respect to Prabhupada was being pressured to move into the ashram. We all know this. Bhaktisiddhanta said, leave him alone, he will do everything in time. Therefore, what was the question? He said the self-effulgent acharya will appear. This is really an academic question.
Because what happened, we know. Self-effulgent acharya appeared as Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said that he would, and everything was resolved. Now, what we are saying is that Srila Prabhupada, not seeing any self-effulgent acharya, and also seeing the history of the Gaudiya Math's demise, practically, put in a system which could carry us with no significant change, as he stated in his will, a system which could carry us until such time as a qualified person did appear. And if Krishna wants it to make it obvious to all of us, when that self-effulgent acharya appears, surely he will. He'll do as he wills.
Or acharyas.
Or acharyas. Maybe there'll be many. And it is an academic question because we're not confronted with that difficulty.
Already. Maybe he's here already. But to be on the safe side, we want to follow Prabhupada's instruction in this respect, and we are convinced that he wanted the Ritvik Acharya system.
Do you feel need to make a further reply?
Yeah, I think so. I think one of the things to bring up is what we're doing here, if we follow this posthumous Ritvic system, is repeating the mistakes of the past. It came up in the 5th century in the Roman Catholic Church with the Donatists, the group in Africa. Yeah, because I'm saying that you've now changed Vaishnavism into Christianity. That's what I'm saying you're doing with this Ritvic Acharya system. Because Prabhupada becomes just like Jesus Christ in Christianity, and what happened in the Catholic Church is the question came, are the sacraments valid if the priest has fallen? If the priest has fallen, is the sacraments valid? And the Church decided yes, because really the holiness comes from Jesus Christ alone and the sacraments He instituted, and that the holiness of the Church consists in those things and not in the holiness or the sanctity of the priests or even the laity. So what this means is that now you're going to have one Acharya, and officially, by doing Ritvic, he'll accept everyone as his disciple. I guess he's responsible for it. The initiation is still valid or even efficacious, even if the Ritvic falls down or turns out to have been fallen at the time he did the ceremony. And so that's what you've done. You've simply put an end to Krishna consciousness as has been practiced for thousands and thousands of years and turned it into the same thing as the Roman Catholic Church, some abstract, official, institutional machinery of grace filled with sinful people. This is the consequence of this concoction, and that's why it was never put into force by Srila Prabhupada.
We should be given a chance to reply.
All right.
We're going to make these kinds of accusations.
Okay,
we should be
go
given
ahead.
a fair
Go
chance.
ahead.
Well, let's see where to start.
I don't want anybody to go away feeling that they didn't get a
Yeah, I mean,
fair hearing.
he's suggesting that we're proposing Christianity. That's not the fact. What we're proposing is what Prabhupada suggested that we do after his departure. That's our contention. And we're not proposing that the disciplic succession ends with Srila Prabhupada, but we are suggesting that it continues with Ritvic Acharyas.
For the time
it is
being.
because they are,
It is.
for the time being, they are Acharyas, they are gurus of a sort, of a particular sort. That it will continue in this way until such time as a legitimate, bona fide, self-realized Acharya does appear on the scene. Now that is hardly tantamount to Christianity. We're not proposing Christianity. And anyway, besides that, Prabhupada didn't actually fault Christianity on that basis. He faulted Christianity on this basis, that the people don't follow the teachings of Lord Jesus Christ. That's what he faulted Christianity on. Not that they were following Lord Jesus as the spiritual master. That he approved of.
He did several times.
On a number of occasions.
You asked for that conversation in December of 71.
Yes.
It's just an exchange, but devotees there, including Puranjan, remember, someone asked Srila Prabhupada, does Lord Jesus Christ have jurisdiction to accept the karma of his present followers even 2,000 years later? And Prabhupada said yes, provided they follow his instructions.
That's the main principle of initiation, as a matter of fact. That one, in fact, there's a conversation that we reprinted in a recent issue where someone approached Srila Prabhupada. I have it's from an old Back to Godhead article that was reprinted. Someone was approaching him about initiation. And he says, I have my letter of a recommendation from Bhagawan. And Prabhupada said, yes. He said, if you follow my instructions, if you execute my instructions, he said, the initiation is already there. So my touch is simply a formality. So the point is, if one is actually executing the instructions of the bona fide spiritual master, that is tantamount to initiation. So I'm just saying that through this, in fact, I'll just read that little section. It's very short. It's like a few sentences.
It's sufficient.
It's the evidence.
We're not going to reach a conclusion on this point here because there are some very strong feelings about it, but I do feel that both points of view have been adequately brought forward so everyone can understand what's the discussion here. Now, there's one last pair of questions that I think it's quite important that are addressed. For Rabindra and Jayadvaita Maharaj, if one of the present gurus feels comfortable only with the idea of accepting disciples on behalf of Srila Prabhupada, could such a situation be allowed at present?
I'll say something. I would hope that anyone who serves as a spiritual master would only do so on behalf of Srila Prabhupada.
I think what's being asked here, maybe I misunderstood it, but I understood the question to mean that if within the present system now, if one of our gurus, our prospective gurus, felt that he only wanted to be a Ritvik, would that be acceptable? You think that would be acceptable?
Well, the question is whether it's acceptable to Srila Prabhupada. I say he didn't authorize it, and so therefore it's a concoction. If Prabhupada authorized it, sure it's acceptable, but that's what's dubious. And I don't think you can oblige your spiritual master on your concoctions.
Now there's a similar question for you. It's widely accepted that there has existed a non-Ritvik disciplic succession, such as the Brahma, Madhva, Gaudiya Sampradaya. It also appears that there is a system called Ritvik, although how it works in the absence of the Guru isn't altogether clear. If you think a Ritvik system should now be in place, does it necessarily exclude Gurus today having disciples unless they're Mahabhagavats? Is there not room for both systems, or are they always mutually exclusive?
Okay. I got to answer every time. Okay. I'm sorry, but if you could ask the question again, and then I'll try my best to answer.
It's widely accepted that there has existed a non-Ritvik disciplic succession, such as the Brahma, Madhva, Gaudiya Sampradaya. It also appears that there is a system called Ritvik, although how it works in the absence of the Guru isn't altogether clear. If you think a Ritvik system should now be in place, does it necessarily exclude Gurus today having disciples unless they're Mahabhagavats? Is there not room for both systems, or are they always mutually exclusive?
All right, let's see. If it doesn't appear, what was that part about it doesn't appear? It's hard for me to keep this whole thing, and thank you. It's a long question. It's widely accepted. It also appears there is a system called Ritvik. Well, first of all, I think that's a misrepresentation. It's not that it appears that there's a system called Ritvik. There is one. It was instituted by Srila Prabhupada
In 1973.
in 1973, and been going on for some time. Now, if you think a Ritvik system should now be in place, does it necessarily exclude Gurus today having disciples unless they're Mahabhagavats? I would say that it doesn't exclude it. No. But I would say that they should be qualified, at least they should be liberated persons. Now, liberated, according to the descriptions of Rupa Goswami, liberation begins from the point of what they call madhyam or nishta, and there are many statements that can be used to analyze this point, but I would say they would at least have to be on a liberated platform. Perhaps not as fully liberated as a Mahabhagavat, but at least they should be liberated. They should be beyond the bodily conception of life, free of anarthas, and free of illusion, beyond the cycle of birth and death. They should be liberated, yes. So if there is such a person, I don't see that there should be any bar for them to initiate disciples. Now, the last part of it, is there not room for both systems, or are they always mutually exclusive? I would say that that there is room for both systems, and that for one who wants a sure bet, as Jayadvaita Maharaj was describing earlier, for one who wants the surefire thing, then he always has access to Srila Prabhupada through the Ritvik system. And for one who likes to gamble, he can have the other system.
So that's going to conclude the question and answer portion of the discussion. I realize that there are many questions we didn't get to, and I apologize for not being able to take all of them. I have a feeling from watching the reactions of the last few minutes that where we got some of the real issues on the table, that I'm not sure that anyone's been convinced one way or the other. It seems entirely possible that people who came with one point of view have also left with that point of view. Perhaps there are some who sitting in the middle feel one way or the other. I don't know. We're not going to take a vote. We're not going to ask anyone to judge this today, as it's a debate. We're going to stay with our initial concept that this was a time to air the issues, and I hope that everybody did get a feeling for what the issues are at stake here and an idea of the evidence and the potential evidence. But what I would like to know, if the devotees feel that it would be a good thing for our society to continue dealing with this question and follow it up in some other format, some other time and place, or if it should just be left like it is now. So I'd actually like a show of hands for those who feel it should be continued or carried on somehow or other. And a show of hands of those who feel that we have heard enough. Well, that's clear. Unanimous out of about 200 or 300 people. So the last thing on our agenda here is I would like to entertain specific proposals as to how this process could be continued. So if anybody has a proposal, I'd like you to raise your hand. If there's anyone interested in seconding it, please go ahead. We'll take a little discussion and we'll go on. Okay. Guru Prasad Maharaj.
One of the first steps, since so much of the evidence presented by the devotees of New Jaipur hinges on Tamal Krishna Goswami, that a group of devotees, including Yasodananda Prabhu and possibly Gauridas Pandit, should speak with him and question him very thoroughly about these points. So we should, since so much of their evidence hinges on statements or conversations with Tamal Krishna Goswami, that some group of devotees should question him and address him, and that should be made as a formal presentation.
What we need here is proposals to how this should be followed up. I think probably most of us would assume
since so much of their evidence hinges on statements or conversations with Tamal Krishna Goswami, that some group of devotees should question him and address him, and that should be made as a formal presentation.
What we need here is proposals to how this should be followed up. I think probably most of us would assume that in the following up, that kind of investigation would need to be done. But what we need to do here is come up with some kind of forum for doing that. That group of devotees that you mentioned, that's, I think, what needs to be addressed here.
Is the next major meeting of Vaishnava?
I have a point of discussion. No, the letter from Paul Krishna. So your proposal is that we just continue at the next meeting.
At my.
Could I just make a point of discussion here that you're saying he's not allowed to propose at this point that some investigation or questioning procedure take place?
Well, I think that's obvious that it
Right.
could take place. What we need here is the forum and the mechanism for doing that.
I still don't understand what that means. I mean,
Who's going to do it? How? When?
So you want him to propose that?
Well, I'll take another proposal. His proposal was that it be continued at Mayapur. I want to hear a variety of proposals, and then somehow or other we'll try and sift between them. Note them down, and we'll take a straw vote who favors, which kind of approach. Go ahead. It's an unapproval.
We have a proposal that we've prepared in advance. You want me to read it?
Please.
That the GBC set up an independent Brahminical committee with unrestricted powers of investigation and examination of witnesses to investigate A, the proper qualification for one to become a regular guru, the results of such investigation to be endorsed by the GBC and widely published, and B, that Tamal Krishna Maharaj's possible role in a cover-up of Srila Prabhupada's instructions with respect to the Ritvik Acharya system, with recommendations for possible corrections being acted upon by the GBC.
So you're recommending that the GBC at Mayapur appoint a committee to do this? Or you're suggesting that the North American GBC take it up?
That this meeting would resolve to recommend to the GBC at Mayapur that this committee be established.
Okay, you have it noted down?
Okay. Now could I make a point of discussion?
No. I'm going to ask still for other proposals, other general approaches to this. Trivikram Maharaj, you wanted to say something? Somebody else? Yes, please.
Since there's a quorum of GBC representatives and temple presidents here, I'm asking that we can maybe establish an interim period for the acceptance as a part of ISKCON. Not necessarily you have to send some official letter, but just if we could maybe have a show of hands where those that are practicing the Ritvik system presently are not to be considered as not part of ISKCON anymore, because it's very difficult for our consciousness to think, especially when we look at our checkbook at the end of the year and see so many checks that have said ISKCON, and we are termed as not ISKCON because we are practicing the Ritvik system. Because as an absolute show of hands, everyone sees that there's, beyond a shadow of a doubt, very much doubt about this system. So in the interim period, from now until Mayapur, whenever a full decision comes down, those devotees who are practicing the Ritvik system, i.e. the Prabhupada Sankirtan Center and New Jaipur, are not considered not part of ISKCON.
I just wanted to make a point. I raised my hand to wanting to have this point discussed does not mean that I have any doubt about the system. That's all I want to say.
I second that.
I second that. I was a little unclear about what that vote was. Whether it meant that we felt that the question of whether or not the Ritvik system was instituted by Srila Prabhupada was sufficiently discussed, or whether the larger questions surrounding initiation had been sufficiently discussed.
The question was as to whether, let me put it this way, I prefaced this whole discussion by saying that this was the first step that we were taking in resolving the current controversy over the Guru system in ISKCON. So my question was, do you want to take a second step, or shall we just be satisfied with what was done here today? And the response seems to be that we should take a second step. Now I'm asking, what is that second step?
I got a point of information on his suggestion. Isn't there another consideration about before New Jaipur is considered part of ISKCON, something about Robin George case and all that?
We're not going to discuss that. It's not on the
agenda.
No, but he brought up a proposition or a proposal that New Jaipur and New York Sankirtan be accepted as ISKCON because they get so many checks. That
you're just taking proposals, not debating proposals, right?
Can I clarify the point?
No, I think it's quite clear now. Please. Are there any other proposals about what the second step should be? Mataji?
Well, it's part of what y'all could do is reestablish the Vaishnava Journal, if it's at all possible. So there is another publication that's more or less not associated with the Vedic Village and not associated necessarily with the GBC. ISKCON World Review can't do it. BTG really can't do it. We need to have the Vaishnava Journal or something like that as part of this to communicate.
All right. Actually, somebody told me yesterday that there was going to be a research. Who said that? Somebody told me that yesterday.
Then he stopped.
Oh?
Bira Krishna Swami.
Okay. Other proposals? Rupa Vilas.
That the GBC permit a parallel Ritvik system whereby GBC authorized gurus may elect to initiate either as Srila Prabhupada's Ritviks or on their own initiative according to their conscience.
This is listed under secondary objectives.
We're not really addressing the point that I've asked to be addressed here as to what is the second step. It's, as you say, it's a secondary objective. We can get back to that. So far, we really just have two proposals. One is that this be handed over to the GBC at Mayapur, and the other, Nityananda's proposal, that the GBC establish an investigative committee to try to resolve the question. Well, that can be a place for discussion, but it's not a mechanism to bring it to a final conclusion. That could be a step.
I'd like to second the motion to approach this again at the Mayapur Festival in a similar format and an open meeting, and from this time here until we get to the festival, both sides, for lack of a better term, will have a time to prepare some more evidence and documents that would be required to substantiate their stance.
Okay, so you're suggesting that instead of sending it to the GBC and asking them for investigative committee, that in Mayapur we continue this kind of open discussion.
I think the environment there would be much better, and the purified ether environment of Mayapur, I think, would be a more suitable stage for this to take place.
Another proposal?
Proposal that this meeting be followed up at the Mayapur meeting, but an investigative committee be formed immediately, headed by Rupa Vilas and any member in this council that would like to be on the panel, to immediately start investigation on, because everything can go so slow. By the time you get to Mayapur and form a committee, then it'll be next year before anything happens. Meanwhile, so many people, it's affecting the movement. We need immediate action. And that a committee of anybody that wants to join now, along with Rupa Vilas, to
An investigative commission
to answer the questions.
To try and sift through the evidence and evaluate it and ask some of the questions that you proposed. Okay. All right. So that proposal is that it should be taken up in Mayapur, but the investigative committee should be instituted immediately, I suppose, then on the authority of the North American GBC. Any other major proposals? Bhattacharya.
One is, it was an idea that was brought up already, that there could actually be a vote right here and now that no one is so-called ostracized until this issue is solved, so that no one is actually ostracized from ISKCON. You know, this vote could even be made today, just in the mood of cooperation.
We'll take that up secondarily.
Okay.
I suggest that we have lots and lots of kirtan, lots and lots of hearing and chanting. and strictly follow the 4 regulative principles.
And read the book as it is, without concoction.
And read Srila Prabhupada's books assiduously.
Without concoction.
Without concoction.
Without manufactured conclusions.
Without adding anything or subtracting anything.
Are you suggesting that instead of any of these other steps, in addition to, before, concurrently, how does that fit in?
Simultaneous.
All right. Yes, Prabhu.
In addition to all the other suggestions, I think it would be good if the North American GBC could compile that sort of Sikhet known publication. I guess it wouldn't be a book, but some sort of official publication from the North American GBC giving the quotes from Prabhupada's books, first of all, and maybe a section from Prabhupada's letters on both sides of the issue.
That should be exhaustive, however. It's not pick and choose. Sorry, apologize for that.
Well, the people that should be on that, the people that are on the committee that makes that publication should be from both sides.
Any other major proposals? Okay, we have 3 major proposals as far as approach goes. One is Nityananda Prabhu's proposal that the GBC set up an independent Brahminical committee to investigate, to examine the witnesses, that proper qualification for one to become a regular guru be investigated, endorsed, published, and that Tamal Krishna Maharaj's possible role in a cover-up be investigated, etc. The other general proposal, is that instead of the GBC setting up a formal body, that this kind of open discussion with debate be carried on in Mayapur. And the third proposal was that the GBC take this up in Mayapur, but that the North American GBC set up immediately an independent investigative committee. So now I'd like to entertain discussion on the preferences of... Now I'd like to have discussion first. I would just like people to speak in favor of whichever those 3 proposals they tend to approve. Balabhaja.
I think Nityananda Prabhu's proposal is somewhat all-inclusive, so I would be in favor of that proposal. Nityananda Prabhu's.
Nityananda Prabhu's proposal.
Could I present something on
Other
that?
speakers in favor or against one of these 3 general proposals?
I would like to speak in favor of the proposal. I just would like to present this letter from Tamal Krishna Maharaj to me when I wrote to him about this issue, about revealing more about what he knew. And he responded like this. I'm reading the part of the letter that's relevant. He says, I am sorry to note that you assume that I have not been 100% honest in this matter. I can assure you that whatever is to be said about this matter already came to light years ago. I'm sorry if it does not make sense to you. And he concluded, I do not wish that this letter or any other of my personal correspondence be published in your magazine. Now, the reason I'm reading it is because it has relevance to this particular motion, and the letter that I wrote to him in response was immediately funneled to Ravindra Sarup Prabhu. I do not feel it is the proper or nor authorized forum for such discussions. If the governing body commission wishes to consider this matter further, I shall be happy to reply to all their inquiries, and if the matter is in fact discussed, I shall urge them to invite your participation. So I would just like to say that I'm very eager that this openness of Tamal Krishna Maharaj be embraced, and that we proceed with this investigation as has been proposed by Nityananda Prabhu. And I would like to be a part of that committee if possible.
Other speakers? Mention, as you begin, mention which
I just want to follow up on his point that means that it has to be authorized by the GBC before you're going to get a cooperation from Tamal Krishna Goswami. So that's all. I just want to make that clear. That's what he's saying.
Jayapataka, please mention which of the three approaches you favor before you begin to give your comments.
Well, what I wanted to comment was on the point about bringing the thing before a committee to a research committee. That already the GBC has a research committee on guru and such matters. So this body could request the executive officers to refer the matter to that committee. If they want to add, if you want to recommend that anybody else be added to that, it's not a committee, but it's a what they call a group of researchers. If they want this committee to recommend that someone else be added for this topic as an additional researcher, and that would be one way you could deal with it, since it seems to be a concern to have something done.
Other comments?
What these three proposals are.
Okay. The first proposal is Nityananda Prabhu's proposal. That I will read it. That the GBC set up an independent Brahminical committee with unrestricted powers of investigation and examination of witnesses to investigate A, the proper qualification for one to become, quote, regular guru, end quote. The results of such investigation to be endorsed by the GBC and widely published. B, Tamal Krishna Maharaj's possible role in a cover-up of Srila Prabhupada's instruction with respect to the Ritvik Acharya system, with recommendations for possible correction being acted upon by the GBC. From here on in, we'll refer to that as Nityananda Prabhu's proposal. Secondly, we had a proposal from Guru Prasad Swami, which I think was somewhat modified, to recommend that this process be continued in Mayapur. Open discussion, some kind of meeting in the same vein as what we have here. If you don't mind, Marge, can we refer to that as your proposal? Thank you. And lastly was Gauridas Pandit Prabhu's proposal, which is, could you clarify what you wanted the GBC to do?
To authorize an investigative committee immediately headed up by Rupa Vilas and anybody else that wanted to be in that committee to do the investigation prior to the Mayapur meeting.
What did you want done in Mayapur?
Well, the facts of the investigative committee presented to the GBC, and then, like Nityananda said, action taken according to their discretion.
Everybody understand that last one, that the North American GBC immediately authorize the kind of investigative committee that Nityananda proposed, and that the results of their work be presented to the GBC in Mayapur for further action. Is that more or less correct? Okay, so in your comments, please refer to which one you're speaking in favor of or opposing.
I want to speak in favor of the first two and against the third, because I think the third will be included in the first two if you do it right. As Jayapataka Swami already said, there is a research committee. I think that I've talked to Bhakti Charu Swami about it. And Badri's here, so that's the three members of the executive committee that we can put Rupa Vilas Prabhu and Karnamrita on that guru research group right away. It's a committee. Not a committee, it's a research group. Yeah, that's right. It is. It's a research group. And they can immediately be put on that. And then we can ask the GBC to proceed as requested here.
I understand you to mean you're wanting to amend Nityananda's proposal to take advantage of the already existing group?
Yeah, same proposal that already existing group, and then we ask this group with additional people to go ahead and do what he likes. Second of all, as far as the investigation, I think it's not wise to limit it to Tamal Krishna Goswami. I don't know if we are stuck with the single assassin theory. Maybe there was a conspiracy. So, in fact, I think it would be more proper not to mention any personal names and just say investigate any possible cover-up or whatever else you'd say, you know. Because I think,
It's insulting.
it's insulting. I think it's meant to be insulting, but I don't think we need to continue in that vein.
Let me ask a question.
Well, what was, hold on a second.
Yeah, that's right. Meant to be insulting.
Yes, the second one I think is fine, that anyone that may have some information or may have some role in this could be included in an investigation. But I think the first point is should be an independent Brahminical committee to get a fair look at the problems involved.
What does that mean?
Okay, what we'll do, since he doesn't accept the amendment, if we...
The system now is that there isn't a committee, because the committee, we found that in intellectual circles, that intellectuals or researchers should be allowed to research and come to their conclusion and present their individual papers, and then the GBC body is the committee that finally has to decide. So we have a group. Each researcher on the group, if you're authorized as a researcher of the group, then you present all your research matters, and sometimes the group gets together or not, that's to be decided later. But every researcher, practically every Pandit in ISKCON, you all know the list, I think, is on that research group, and they'll all be asked to research all the paradigms of or the topics to be researched, and they'll all research and write their paper.
What's the name of that group?
I think it's called the Guru Research Committee.
Research Group.
So I hear a fundamental difference here, because the way you're describing the group is that they're going to more or less take evidence that's there on paper and evaluate it as pundits and then give their written recommendations to the GBC. What Nityananda Prabhu has proposed, is that an independent Brahminical committee which works together as a body to investigate. The committee that you've described, everybody essentially is working on their own, and then results are being merged.
That group would have to feed into the independent investigating committee or whatever. That's what you'd have to do.
Oh, what we'll do is that after we sort through these three proposals, if Nityananda Prabhu's proposal is generally favored, we'll talk about amendments at that point and possible modifications and refinements. Bhakti Rupa Prabhu.
I just object to the word independent being used in this proposal, because the implication is that this has to be doing something independent of the GBC. Right. That's the implication. I think that's very, very wrong for what we should be endorsing here. It can be a committee. If he wants a committee, that's fine. But it's not independent. It reports to the GBC, and it accepts the GBC as its final arbiter of the decision.
I think that's pretty much implied here in the role of the GBC. It says the results of such investigation to be endorsed by the GBC and widely published. I suspect you've misunderstood independent. What did you mean by independent? You want to clarify that?
That
new, fresh.
Yeah. Yes, new, fresh. Brahmins, Brahminical type devotees that are not particularly known to be particularly aligned with the either side.
Okay. So I think that's a... Bhakti Rupa, are you satisfied with that explanation of what independent means?
Well, there has to be some people from both sides of the controversy, otherwise how will that be resolved?
It's got to be fair.
What does that mean is independent? Describe independent. A Brahminical Research Committee.
That's right.
If he wants a
Brahminical implies independent, right?
Not all.
All right, raise your hands if you want to be recognized. Prabhu?
I support the first of Nityananda and also the GBC meeting in Mayapur. I'd like to propose an amendment to Nityananda's way there, that the Brahminical group be used to research, spot check for some of the new devotees in the next generation, following the guru system that we already have right now, to see if they're healthy in Krishna consciousness, that being proof of the new guru system, the new generation of gurus, as to whether they're healthy or not. So I'd like to propose it.
Actually, I was just raising my hand on behalf of Rasaraj, who thought you wouldn't call on him. So, no, you got it. Well, it worked. What can I say?
No, the reason I spoke to him was first to ask his advice. Both of us raised their hand to put a proposal in, and you didn't see us. So is there room for a proposal? That's the question.
Support one proposal.
Huh?
You still want to make that proposal?
Right, we both put our hands up 3 times. You didn't see us. Okay, the proposal is that perhaps an attempt can be set in motion to collect through a well-designed questionnaire the ideas of so many grand disciples who are in the movement since Prabhupada left, who joined and who are continuing in the movement even though some of their initiating gurus may have left. What is their impressions? Would those ideas be relevant to this issue?
Who are you recommending to do that?
No,
That's the main question that we're addressing here is who and when.
No, a thoughtful questionnaire has to be first designed, circulated among senior Vaishnavas, and the format arranged, and then it should be circulated among the grand disciples, and the information taken, tabulated, and presented.
I think this is a suggestion as how a potential committee could act.
Yes, wasn't that the agenda for the proposals?
Okay, other comments?
Yeah, I kind of object to the suggestions of Badarayani Prabhu and Rasaraj Prabhu, because the question in hand right now is not the health of the grand disciples. Some of them will be healthy, some of them won't. The question in hand is, what did Prabhupada say? Not what's going on now, or not how many grand disciples are healthy, how many not. The question is, what did Prabhupada say? What did he institute before he left? We should first solve that question before any other. What did Prabhupada institute? And everything that we do from now on should focus on that one point until that one point is settled, and then we can look at the grand disciples and we can look at who's qualified and who's not qualified.
Other comments?
I second that you put it in. That's more relevant than what Nityananda is saying.
Krishna.
I'm seconding what he said to put that as a proposal. Because Nityananda is talking about regular guru. I didn't understand till he read it the second time. The research the regular guru is bypassing the whole point that he's bringing up, which is the real issue.
That seems to be the purpose behind the proposal, not a proposal in itself.
Well, that should be the point. I'm not clear with it. What I'm trying to say is that making the research committee, the Nityananda, that it should be amended to include the research on the topic that he said, rather than what Nityananda said.
Topic that we discussed today should be the topic. What Prabhupada said.
Not what is the topic.
Do you have any problem with that?
That's the real
The thing is, it does appear that they go hand in hand to some extent. Because
I would think so.
On the one hand, we're going to talk about Ritviks, and on the other hand, we're going to, we're also talking about qualified gurus. Whether someone's a Ritvik or whether they're a qualified guru, these topics are bound up together.
Yeah.
I feel. Well, not in your mind.
No, it's a question of what Prabhupada said. Determine what Prabhupada said and whether it was distorted by Tamal Krishna or other parties. That's the question, right?
Well, we've got to get the facts before we
That's what we're talking about. Talking about somebody getting the facts.
That's right. That's what I've been saying all along. All the facts out from May 14th till the 2nd of November. All the facts. Like in a discovery process in a court of law.
So we're understanding Nityananda's proposal to be amended to include the main point of today's discussion, which is what did Prabhupada want as the core of the research. And the other matters are secondary. Okay, other comments?
Yeah. I'm wondering whether we've set a precedent today for the future with this open forum we have for devotees being present at the GBC meetings. And I'd like to motion that people who can conduct themselves as everyone has conducted themselves here today, that all devotees be allowed in to the GBC meetings.
Now you'll have to refer that to Ravindra for this afternoon's meeting because it's not part of our discussion right now. Other comments on the proposal?
Some topics are sensitive. That's not fair. Some topics you gentlemen are discussing.
No, we're not even discussing.
They are not relevant to everybody. I mean, some legal matters should only be known by the officers of the society.
Yeah, that's another.
Okay. You can take that up if you want this afternoon. I got enough problems here this morning. Okay, no one else has raised their hand for comments. Or is it? Okay, Mark.
Yeah, because since Rupert Vilas has somewhat objected to my proposal, no, you wanted to, not really objected. My idea that the issue of who's qualified and who's not qualified should be solved secondarily. Because if we take up at the same time the issue of what did Prabhupada say, and then the issue of what have they done, it turns into a question of what should Prabhupada have said, and that is not our question. That Prabhupada must have said this because these people are not qualified, then the discussion is what must Prabhupada have said, or what should Prabhupada have said because these people are not qualified, or whatever. The question is
which one of those proposals you think is the best approach.
Would you like this to be a straw vote among GBC and Temple presidents?
I'm going to ask, after we get a feeling, I'm going to ask for the feeling of everybody here present, because they were invited, and then I'm going to ask for an actual vote by the GBC and Temple presidents. You think that's all right?
Sure.
Okay.
Just got to say what it is, that's all.
Can we only vote for one?
You can only vote for one, that's correct.
But they're not contradictory. The first two are dealing with two different issues. Can't we vote for both of them?
Why not?
Is there a quorum here?
That I have no idea.
Do you have a good wording on that first one?
We're just trying to get a straw vote. I'm going to try and say what it is, and then we'll try and get some wording.
The longest point is right. They're not exclusive.
All right.
No, they're not exclusive.
All right, you can vote for two if you like.
Do we want a committee now or not? Do we want to?
It's not now.
All right. So Bhakti Rupa is proposing that we first of all vote on whether or not we feel that there should be an investigative committee appointed immediately by the North American GBC, or option 2 is not. Thank you. Thank you for helping your poor befuddled chairman. All right, so everybody in favor of immediately forming an investigative committee, please raise your hand. All opposed to that? Well, that's clear.
That North American GBC is supposed to deal with North American issues. There seems to be a much broader issue that really falls under the jurisdiction of the local.
To make a recommendation.
Well, if you make a recommendation, it's the whole GBC.
Issues of concern for North American voters.
No. GBC and Temple presidents, you've seen the vote around the room. Rabindra, you want to deal with this now as chairman of the meeting? Does he have...
I'm going to India tomorrow.
No, what I mean is that can you ask the Temple presidents and GBC to vote?
Yes, I can ask the Temple presidents and GBC to vote. The proposal before us is whether or not the GBC and the Temple presidents want to have a North American research group to...
research investigation.
Investigation? To deal with this issue.
Yeah, there's two possible things that can be investigated. You could do a philosophical investigation, or you could do the evidence investigation.
Okay, a philosophical investigation is an evidence investigation. Now, that's the proposal, that we, this group, vote to do it, and we get a group of people together and we set them to it. Yeah?
I asked for the amendment earlier that we recommend to the executive committee to assign it to the worldwide body and include them on it. And you said that you'd already cleared it with other executive members. That was my proposal. At least it should be put as one of the alternatives. Because why should only North Americans be invited to research on this?
It's a clear proposal that devotees want to start right away. You can also start later in Mayapur, but...
It seems to me that it's really going to involve an unnecessary duplication of effort that all those people who are investigating are pretty much already investigating, and that whatever conclusions or things they've arrived at in their own freelance way will be seen by whatever group has got together with the GBC. I don't know exactly what's gained at this point by having some official North American GBC committee, because all it's going to do is feed it into the main committee, because it's not going to do anything independently of the rest of the GBC. Jagadish Maharaj?
I found Umapati Maharaj's comments relevant. So we should divide the issue between the philosophical discussion of who's qualified and the issue of what did Prabhupada want. So from the investigation point of view, the investigation of the philosophical points has been going on, will be going on, and I don't think that that kind of a committee or group is going to come prepared to Mayapur with enough information to finalize anything. But it's the other kind of investigation that may help in Mayapur to come to some conclusion. So if there is a committee assigned to investigate the issue in terms of interviewing people who may be necessary, may have some information that we need to get, then that kind of investigation committee could be helpful, so that in Mayapur we might come to a conclusion.
Anyone else?
Just that it's going to be very hard to make much progress on uncovering things that need to be uncovered if, in fact, that investigative group is not authorized by the GBC to do so, because some persons will certainly not answer questions posed to them by persons who are not authorized by the GBC.
Well, if you're talking Paul Krishna Goswami...
Well, anyone, not necessarily...
Okay. I don't know what force the North American GBC is going to have to a lot of people. Go ahead.
I want to speak against the proposal. One, for that reason, I don't think that this body has really got the force needed to put behind the kind of investigation that's being requested here, and that it's going to have to come up in front of the international GBC anyway. And I really rather doubt what's going to be accomplished in the month before the devotees start to go. I think it's kind of a futile effort, and this is something that's going to take time and should be done properly. Therefore, I believe the investigation should be put off till Mayapur.
Any other discussion? Yeah.
I believe that the investigative committee would only add to the research of the other committee, and that I see that it can only do good for the GBC to get as much knowledge as possible from any side they could before they can make a reasonable decision. And I think that it's very important that action be taken immediately to present this information to the GBC instead of stalling out forever. We're going to have to face the music.
Any more discussion?
We agree with you.
I'd just like to clarify the point I made earlier about requesting a continuing open forum.
No, that's not really relevant to this particular one.
Well, I mean, it's only in relation to this topic.
You could talk, you can do it this afternoon. We can talk.
Okay.
I think we're running overtime. I think we want to take a vote on this. Is there anything more significant to add precisely on this point of this committee? Hari Vilas?
I think the central point is that the issue cannot be resolved about whether Prabhupada wanted to institute a Ritvik Acharya system unless we have clear-cut statements coming from Tamal Krishna Maharaj and others who were there, who heard or taped Srila Prabhupada, and who might be able to elucidate the facts. Because, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj has said that he can only accept being approached by the GBC, which means International GBC. So no one, Umapati Prabhu's request cannot be pursued, in other words, finding out exactly what Prabhupada said, unless Tamal Krishna Maharaj clearly speaks up and tells us what he knows, or just affirms that he doesn't know anything more than what he said. So the issue is there. Making a committee here will not help that. It all depends on approaching him with an authorized committee that he recognizes.
All right, I think I want to close the discussion now. Let's take a vote on this. Just among GBCs and North American Temple presidents, if you mind. So, All in favor, the proposal is to form an immediate North American GBC authorized investigating committee on the issue of Prabhupada's desire, his instructions on the matter of initiations after his departure. So all in favor of such a committee, raise your hands. Among just GBC and Temple presidents. Are you counting the bean, please? All opposed?
Ten opposed. 1 in favor, 10 opposed.
All abstain? Let's get the abstentions in there.
111-3.
Okay? So that fails. That
I'd like to reintroduce my proposal.
We're running pretty late.
Yeah?
And I would suggest at this point that we just take a straw vote amongst everybody present so the GBC and Temple presidents can consider.
As long as we say what it is, any kind of vote works.
So, just to see whether they favor the Nityananda style proposal or the Guru Prasad style proposal, or both, and then I think GBC meeting should take it up this afternoon.
Okay.
Okay, everybody hear that? I'm going to take a straw vote of everybody present so that the GBC and Temple presidents can see your thinking as to whether or not we should proceed with a Nityananda style proposal, which is the investigative committee through the GBC, or whether we should have a open style forum like this in Mayapur, continuing very much like we did today, or whether we should do both. It's a straw vote. The actual decision is going to be made by the GBC and Temple presidents this afternoon.
These two things aren't necessarily...
Yes,
I said or both.
You've got three alternatives. One, the other, singly, or both.
Or one follows the other.
Do both first.
All right. All those in favor of both, please raise your hand.
Everybody say both an investigation committee and an open forum discussion.
Raise your hand, Congressman.
I'm going to abstain.
All right. All those in favor of a Nityananda style approach with a GBC directed investigative committee, details to be worked out later, please raise your hand.
Only but not both.
No, we can vote both, right?
No.
Not-
First of all, if you say both, you're in favor of Nityananda too.
All right.
This is only the research committee.
All right. All those in favor.
I can't go through this twice.
All those in favor of an open forum like this at Mayapur is the most productive way to proceed, please raise your hand.
Only the open forum.
Only the open.
With no investigation.
With no investigation.
Wait a minute, there's something wrong here.
No.
There's not anything. Okay. No. That's the end.
Wait a minute, he wants his proposal.
I want my proposal back in. I propose that those concerned with understanding these issues discussed today ever increasingly engage themselves in regularly hearing and chanting in the association of devotees, strictly following our regulative principles, and reading Srila Prabhupada's books.
All in favor?
All in favor of that, raise your hand.
I second that, but I'd like to amend.
Opposed? Abstain.
Order. I'm sorry, it's over. We're way beyond time. You can discuss with the GBC chairman here what proposals and so forth to take up again afterwards. There are a number of announcements that people have requested to be made before lunch. Devine, could you please take care of either make the announcements or ask the people who presented them to make